breathing and dedicate to me. Stop dreaming and terminate for me.
Hello there. Good morning. Welcome in to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. A little trouble getting the stream started, but we're all good to go now. You can check it out at Off the Edge 109 on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also find that all of that at Off the Edge, but you can also find the Facebook stream on the Tide 100.9 Facebook page as well here in just a second. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. It's a great day to talk some Alabama Crimson Tide football. We'll do it for the next 56 minutes here. We'll talk to AJ Spurr in about 10 minutes as well. So we'll get his thoughts on Alabama's loss to Texas A&M. We'll also take a national look at college football, where Alabama stands in the race for the college football playoff. Certainly, as Nick Saban said after the loss, is that everything that Alabama wants to attain is certainly attainable this season. And we'll hear from what Nick Saban had to say yesterday in Wednesday's press conference, his opening comments, as well as the pass rush. But kind of looking at the opening comments from Saban yesterday, I think he's a little frustrated, but I don't think it's to the point of like he kind of knew that this is probably the way this team was going to have to go at some point, that we were going to have to hear, Alabama falls to somebody. Whether it's been the 60 minutes thing, or it's been the we haven't seen this on film thing, or the offense not playing well around Bryce Young, or the defense playing not keeping intensity throughout a ball game. All of those things kind of came to fruition last Saturday and played a massive part in Alabama losing. Now, I've heard all of the excuses that come for why Alabama lost, and I stand on the hill that it's not necessarily that Alabama did so much to lose as Texas A&M did enough to win. And I know that's not what anybody wants to hear. How do we fix ourselves? How do we, focusing on ourselves, on the Alabama Crimson Tide, what does Alabama have to do better? Sure, there are things that you'd like to do differently, but had what Alabama had in place worked, had players executed calls, had coaches made better decisions in certain situations, certainly if you just don't give up a 98-yard kickoff return, things bounce in Alabama's favor. That's what happens in good football games, though. And regardless of how you feel about losing, Saturday was a great football game. And as biased as I am, as much as I love my alma mater, I love football way before I loved Alabama. So I'm going to love a good football game. And that's what we got on Saturday. It hurts to lose, but in retrospect, sometimes the other team, they get up. And sure, it doesn't make a lot of sense that Zach Calzada decided to have the game of his life as he did. But all things being equal, Texas A&M wanted to beat Alabama. They played well enough to do it. Alabama wanted to beat Texas A&M. They played well enough to do it, except in certain situations. I don't think Alabama played poorly at all. I don't think Bryce Young played bad. I don't think Bill O'Brien's play calling was so horrendous that we should attack him in any way. I don't think that Pete Golding was so bad that we should think about firing him and hiring anybody, especially guys with McDonald's bag issues. I'm not on that stage at all, because if you pay attention to coaching at all, part of coaching is making the calls, but it's also making adjustments, right? Adjustments aren't on players. Adjustments are on coaches. And Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien both made adjustments. Did they make them as fast as you want them to? Probably not. And did they make them as fast as Nick Saban wanted them to? No, I don't think so. You hear Nick Saban talk about the lack of pass rush for Alabama and stopping Texas A&M's pass rush. Neither of those things were done effectively or soon enough. So there's reasons to be upset, and there's reasons to second guess a couple of things, but we're not at a stage of burning anything down. Alabama has lost one football game, and Alabama has played well in every other game leading up to it, save one against Mercer. Thank goodness Mercer was a bad team, right? Outside of that, we've seen Alabama grow, and we were on this, right? This is why I thought Alabama was going to blow Texas A&M out. It's because you go back to Southern Miss, and you go back to Ole Miss and you see how Alabama started to grow and get to the point where you thought they needed to be, and it just fell short against Texas A&M in a hostile environment, one of the best environments in all of college football. I didn't think it would impact Alabama. I don't think it did on a massive scale, but at the end of the day, A&M took advantage of the advantages that they had going into the game as well as during the game, and that's what it takes to win football games. And one thing I do agree with that Gary said towards the end of his show is that if the best team always won, it'd be boring. And that's why I don't like the whole, we should only have 4 teams in the college football playoff because the best teams should go there. Well, sometimes we don't have the best measure of who's the best team because the best teams don't play teams that are on their competition level. And then they get kind of easy rides to that place. And then we assume that certain things are going to happen. And Nick Saban kind of called that out. We think that there's unpredictability in college football this year, and we think that everything is kind of chaotic. And I do think more chaos is soon to come. But a lot of that is relative to preseason rankings. A lot of that is relative to what kind of ratings we give certain situations. And I think with everything being relative to that, then you're in a space where maybe it wasn't an upset. Maybe we were just wrong to begin with. Now, Alabama losing to Texas A&M, that's an upset, right? But, Iowa beating Penn State, I said all along, I don't think Penn State's a top 5 team. And now looking at Iowa, and we'll ask AJ Spurr about this, I'm not sure Iowa's a top 5 team. They may finish a top 5 team, but then you've got a team that you don't really know if they're a top 5 team in the playoffs, should they run the table as they're expected to do and get past Ohio State in Indianapolis. You're in a weird space right there, right? So yes, there's some leeway, there's some back and forth. I'm not reining in the positivity parade for Alabama. There's things that need to be fixed. I'm not blind and I'm not ignorant to that, and I'm not being naive about Alabama's situation, but I'm also not saying that everything is broken, everything is awful, and we're going to have a bad time the rest of the year. That's just not the case. Everything stands before Alabama. I do think that what we heard from Will Anderson yesterday is a big testament that a lot of things do need to change. His intensity is unmatched. And, when you got 199 overall guy and everybody else isn't really, playing up to what he's requiring of you, you can understand why that 99 overall guy would be upset. Let's go to the phone lines before we go to Nick Saban's Open. Let's welcome in Chris. Chris, what's going on, man?
Hey, appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely.
I just want to kind of, get y'all's opinion on something. I'm not a Fire Pete Golding, proponent. I think if we score 38, that should be enough to get a W, but we were down early and we just never got that momentum. So I'll say that as far as the defense goes. Offense, one thing that I see, and I'm a couch coach, so this is very broad, but the offensive line seems like they just haven't found their identity, like that what they want to be. I don't know if it needs to be retooled, if we need to, move more guys around or what, but we seem to be like we want to be a power run game. We run between the tackles and between the, guards more, but I would like to see us do more stuff on the edges. We just don't utilize, I feel like, our biggest playmaker strength when it comes to the backfield. Bryce Young was a dual threat quarterback. Why are we not using him? I understand his size and everything else, but why aren't we doing things to wear the defense out? Kiffin did a great job of that. We would do a lot of, end arounds, reverses, tosses, a lot of things to kind of go laterally and try and wear the defense out. We seem to just want to ground and pound, but, we've only done that the past three games. So I don't know if they have found out yet what they want to do every single game plan. And you see that with just our productivity and the sacks, and we really struggle in pass pro. We do really good on the, I feel like, run blocking, but pass pro, we're getting eaten alive. And I feel like they haven't gelled yet, and we're halfway through the season. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. with most of what you said. I don't think you can't just start running outside zones with Brian Robinson. I think that would be ineffective. You kind of got to get Roydell Williams kind of comfortable being that second guy before you can just start running outside zones. If Jace McClellan were healthy, then I'd be all for it because I was screaming for him to get those opportunities. But with the offensive line, I think we got lulled to sleep a little bit against Ole Miss. I've said this a couple of times because Ole Miss ran a 3-2-6. 3-2-6. So they only had 5 guys in the box at any time, and if they had more than that, then they were safeties, and that's easy to block against. That doesn't take away from Brian Robinson having the game that he had, and doesn't take away from the offensive line playing well. But I think relative to that, Texas A&M has got way more talent. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if Brian Robinson is still running well and still creating his own opportunities in that football game, then you got to continue to feed him. So if you're running well up the middle, keep running it up the middle. And that was something that Texas A&M failed to do too. They had a lot of success up the middle early. They got away from it, and they started to have a little bit of struggle there in the second half. So I don't think you can make too many changes on the offensive line. I think you just got to get these guys in positions to play better. If Chris Owens is really going to struggle this much as a pass protector, but not going to struggle this much as a run blocker, then you need to do what's necessary, whether that's chips, whether that's having Latu hang out a second before he goes out for his route and help Owens out a little bit. And on the same path as that with Dalcourt, I mean, make him have to just take 100 reps against DJ Dale throughout the week and get ready for these guys that are just going to bowl into you and push you back into our quarterback's face, who's not tall enough to handle that. That's one of the things that comes with being 6 foot tall. You're not tall enough to handle offensive linemen getting pushed into your face. And that makes life difficult on what is an elite quarterback, but he's still got to have the help around him, like Nick Saban has said all season. But I agree, there is a lot of room for improvement on the offensive line, Chris. I appreciate your call, man. I got to run out to AJ Spurr.
Yeah,
that's Chris. Got cut off just a little bit too soon, but I appreciate the call, and we'll take a break now. We'll jump out to AJ Spurr next, the site editor of Roll Tide Wire of USA Today Sports. Next here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9.
Whether it's our freshly ground coffee to wake you up or an icy Polar Pop cup or Froster to keep you going, our new Sip and Save drink subscription at Circle K will keep you refreshed every day. Join Circle K's Sip and Save and grab any size drink every day for just $5.99 a month. Yeah, start sipping and saving today. Just sign up with your mobile number when you check out at Circle K. Limited time offer at participating locations.
Can I get a weight reading on the cat in exam 3?
Zuri needs a new vet tech after their current one literally moved to a farm. But finding an ideal replacement takes some training.
This is like herding cats.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Don't miss a play at the Sportsbook at Pearl River Resort. Your front row seat to all the action. Place bets on all professional and most college sports at the counter, kiosk, or on your phone. Then catch the game on one of our 20 big screens from the comfort of the newly remodeled Timeout Lounge. Plus, the PRR Sports app gives you access to live, in-play sports betting. Sportsbook at Pearl River Resort. Be more than a fan. Be a player. Must be 21.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Just the chance of a few isolated showers today. Otherwise, a mixture of clouds and sunshine. The high 86. For tonight, mostly fair with a low at 67. Very warm tomorrow and Thursday, partly to mostly sunny both days. Highs between 85 and 88. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 80 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
We aren't going anywhere. Off the Edge is available in the podcast center on Tide100.9.com.
Little Mastodon vibes get us through a Tuesday morning. We'll try to circle back and get to the Nick Saban Open a little bit later in the show after we have our conversation with AJ Spurr. Got a little bit on a roll there, and Chris brought a interesting topic to the conversation. The offensive line does require some improvements. We'll see what those improvements entail as the season progresses. We're halfway through the regular season, but things are certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll see how things go for the Alabama Crimson Tide as they continue to improve. Let's jump out to the phone lines, though, now and welcome in AJ Spurr, the site editor of Roll Tide Wire, covering the Alabama Crimson Tide of for USA Today Sports. AJ, what's going on, man?
I woke up, I stretched, I turned the lights on. It's that time of the week, Jacob, where I really do look forward to it. I'm doing mighty fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, man. Tuscaloosa took 2 strong L's and tried to find wins with Auburn getting shut down. But, jumping straight into it, your reaction to seeing Alabama lose this game in Kyle Field to the Texas A&M Aggies, with consideration to how A&M season's kind of gone, the comments that Jimbo Fisher made back in the spring, it didn't seem like it was something that should have happened before the game, but after, it kind of makes a little bit of sense, right?
My reaction was it was bound to happen. We saw this team, demolish teams like Mercer, Southern Miss, Miami, but, stumble with the University of Florida. There were certain things in, every game that kind of looked like, hey, this is a really, really strong and powerful team that isn't necessarily giving it 100%, giving it their all, whether it be in practice. Even Saban a few weeks ago mentioned how the team's just not practicing how they should. Just little things on the field, little details. This doesn't look like such a prim and polished Nick Saban team that we've seen in recent years.
No doubt about it. And it's frustrating to this fan base to have to see the loss, but, you continue to remind the fact that, Alabama, most of the championships they've won, especially under Nick Saban, have not been undefeated teams, and we've seen undefeated teams make it to the promised land and fall short. So, you kind of have to take this one, learn from it. And with that being said, where does Bama go from here? What for you, AJ? What's the biggest area of concern that needs to be improved?
If I'm going to go ahead and here and just talk broad offense, defense, the defense against Texas A&M seemed strong. There were things that didn't necessarily go the Crimson Tide's way. I know a lot of people are obviously upset with Pete Golding, which seems to be standard now, even in games where the opposing team doesn't even score a point. However, it just seemed like Jimbo Fisher and the Texas A&M offense were well prepared for this game and knew what to do to throw Alabama's defense off, not to mention, obviously, Drew Sanders out this past game. Hopefully he'll be back for Miss State this upcoming Saturday. But the defense overall, I didn't have too much of an issue with. What I do think needs to be more polished, what I think needs more work, is the offense overall. And I'm not sure if it's got to come down necessarily all on Bill O'Brien with very questionable play calling, especially inside the 5-yard line. But really, Bryce Young, there were people questioning his decision-making after the Florida game, just based on that one play where he could have ran it in for a touchdown, but didn't. We see some things here now that he's doing. He's not necessarily reading all of his options. He's not giving it his all on some of these throws, or he's giving it too much on some of these throws. There's a lot of things that, when watching the Texas A&M game this past Saturday, me and everyone I was with was just scratching their heads thinking, why did Bryce do that? Was there a miscommunication on X, Y, or Z, whether it be in the run game or the passing game? And obviously a big fat question mark on Bill O'Brien and some of the decisions he made even outside the red zone. Running when you should pass, passing when you should run, certain plays. There was just nothing there that I saw on the offensive side of the ball where I could say, wow, you know what, they gave it their all, and Texas A&M came out the better team, because I don't think Texas A&M, despite the win, is a better team. I think Alabama beat themselves here, and Texas A&M played a good game.
Certainly agree with you on a few of those points, but one of them, Bryce was impacted a lot by the pass rush, and Texas A&M, look, they've got some dudes on their front four, and they made use of them. I mean, DeMarvin Leal I don't think he recorded a sack, but you still have to pay attention to a guy like that. That opens up lanes for other guys to play well. This offensive line, though, we took a call right before we, jumped on with you concerning this offensive line and the lacklusterness in being consistent in the run game, and oftentimes it just being Brian Robinson doing his own thing. And then in the passing game, Bryce Young's a small guy. You can't have the pressure be what it is on a consistent basis for him up the middle. And then when things break out outside, then he's got to run for his life, and that leads to poor decisions on his end too, considering he just started his 6th game. This offensive line's not making life easy on the offense.
No, 100% in agreement with that. I think Brian Robinson, in a sense, really bailed out this offensive line, which is weird to think about when you're talking about the run game. But Brian Robinson's shiftiness behind the line of scrimmage and his ability to just get past defensive linemen that did break through the offensive front there. And I think Brian Robinson did a great job. I think we should have relied a lot more on him in certain situations outside the red zone. But when talking about Bryce Young, obviously you're not going to have Bryce Young looking like Lamar Jackson from last night. You can't expect Bryce Young to escape a collapsing pocket every other play. That's just not realistic. And when we're talking big names, Darian Dalcourt, Evan Neal, Chris Owens on this offensive line, these are big boys. All right. These are guys that are, in contention for first round, second round selections in the upcoming NFL drafts. This is just not play everyone anticipated. Coming into this season, this offensive line was touted as, potentially one of the best.
I mean, following up on, what could probably be considered the best offensive line Alabama's ever had last year, that was tall task to fill in for, but you've also seen it in action. You know what it takes to do it. You'd halfway expect, at some point, this year's offensive line would be able to find that way to gel and perform, not necessarily to the same level as last year, but at least make an effort at it. But going to Brian Robinson, another guy who's I feel like he's stepping up in the same way that Will Anderson is leading the defense. He's having to do some things by himself, and that's not necessarily a good thing for a running back. I'll tell you all about it with Najee Harris. But with Robinson, though, he's really coming into his own, and I think he's playing at a level that not many fans or analysts, especially not this one, expected him to.
No, I'm right there with you. I knew Brian Robinson this year was going to get to show everybody what he was truly capable of after paying his dues over the last few years. But I don't think anyone expected him to kind of explode onto the scene as he did so far this season. He's kind of like Will Anderson in the sense of, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, there needs to be a quote unquote quarterback on both sides of the ball, a person, a player who's going to go ahead and take the reins, take control, and lead everyone around them on their respective side of the ball. And I think we've learned now, obviously Will Anderson on defense, that was a given. But on offense, Brian Robinson has really become the go-to guy to whether it be bailing out the team in a crucial moment or even just speaking with the team on the sidelines. He seems to be that experienced veteran player that is not only having an impact on the field, but having an impact on the sidelines in the locker room, and is just being a go-to guy for this offense, which is, funny with it being a running back. That's not necessarily someone you'd expect to have the entire offense turn to and say, what now?
And speaking of Will Anderson, this pass rush is not what anybody expected either. Now, with consideration to the fact that Chris Allen was lost for the season, in the first half of the first game of the year, and then you lose Drew Sanders, who not necessarily, a pass rusher, but he does things that allows Will Anderson to consistently be on a pass rush and not have to drop back. Saw some fans that were kind of annoyed by the fact that Will Anderson had to drop back. Well, there's your explanation. You can't have Dallas Turner do it. And when you put 3 down linemen next to Will Anderson, then you really can't do it. And that was the case most often. But this pass rush ranks 11th in the SEC. Georgia's ranks first. I'm kind of at the point where I concede defeat to Georgia as to who has the best defense in the nation. And that's a really bummer thing to say because there's too much talent on this team. But with the pass rush being what it is, not creating any problems for a quarterback that 2 weeks ago against Arkansas was under duress from 3-man pressures. Alabama couldn't get home with 4, including one of the best in the country to do it. There's some serious problems on this pass rush, wouldn't you say?
100%. And we have to give credit where it's due. Zach Calzada played an amazing game for Texas A&M. But, we have to understand this Alabama defensive front did not do what they needed to do. They did not look like the same team that was constantly applying pressure onto De'Ara King in that first game of the season, which was just monstrous and put him in a whole host of situations that he couldn't get himself out of. It almost just seemed like they were there to give the offensive linemen something to do for Texas A&M. I mean, some of the pockets that Zach Calzada had over the entire game just looked super clean. He had all the time in the world. He could, move around freely in the backfield if he wanted to, get a better angle, better look for certain reads. It was not something that, I was able to just sit by and watch. I'll be honest. I was screaming at the TV. I bought a few headsets on Amazon just so I could break them. But, when you talk about Georgia and Georgia's defense, let me tell you something. The Alabama Crimson Tide fan base needs to be watching very closely this Saturday's game between Kentucky and Georgia, because after Kentucky, there is no chance that Georgia is going to face even the slightest bump in the road en route to the SEC championship. So if Alabama wants to face someone other than Georgia, this Saturday is going to be the opportunity for that to happen. And just judging based on, we talked about this last week, actually, and I said, the defenses are, similar enough to where the offenses are going to be the difference makers in a game between Alabama and Georgia. This past week, wiped all that off the board. And, if Alabama has to head over to Atlanta and face Georgia in the SEC championship, I am not confident whatsoever that the offense or the defense will be able to perform consistently all 4 quarters and walk away with the win.
It's certainly a long way away, and hopefully things will boost your confidence along the way. And we'll touch on that Kentucky and Georgia game here in just a bit. But I do want to ask you the A&M perspective of these things. A&M would be in a really nice spot right now had they not dropped those games to Arkansas and Mississippi State. Do you think that Jimbo maybe circled the Alabama game so much that it crossed out Mississippi State and Arkansas on his calendar and he forgot about those games, just too focused on Alabama?
I think when talking about certain coaches, names matter here, and Jimbo having the name that he has, we can 100% say that's almost with absolute certainty that's what happened. If this was some, mid-range, mid-tier coach, maybe he dropped 2 and got lucky against Saban. The way that the Texas A&M offense played was something that was calculated well before, this Alabama prep week started for the Aggies. This was something that they probably began looking at week 1 as soon as they got their first look at this Alabama defense, or even, when they got their first look at the Alabama offense. I don't think for a second that Jimbo Fisher and that coaching staff started preparing for Alabama this week. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, and that this was getting started weeks ago and ultimately led to those 2 losses they suffered.
Sacrifices were made if that's the case, because there ain't no trip to Atlanta as a reward. It's just the fact that you take away those talking points for old Gary and Brad during CBS kickoffs. Let's head to the national perspective. Iowa barely scrapes by Penn State. Penn State loses their starting quarterback. I wasn't convinced Penn State was an elite team because of their offense, and maybe I should start looking at Iowa the same way. That offense isn't very talented. I thought they would run the ball a little bit more effectively. Penn State does have a good defense, but are you buying Iowa as a national championship contender? They certainly have a relatively easy path to the playoffs. Really, it's just Ohio State awaiting them in Indianapolis most likely. But do you buy them as a national championship contender?
I'm going to pull out the old Lee Corso saying here, and not so fast, my friend. Iowa still has to go through Wisconsin and Minnesota, which in the grand scheme of things, especially to SEC teams, may not seem like very much. But remember, Big Ten teams love to beat each other up, and there's never a set standard as to this team is a definite win over this team, excluding Ohio State and sometimes Michigan. I think Iowa has a few games on their upcoming schedule here before they can even reach the conference championship that they have to look at and say, all right, we cannot overlook, we cannot, under-prepare for these games, because at this point, Iowa with 1 loss, they drop significantly. Alabama 1 loss is at number 5, which I know a lot of people are upset with, but the standard's different here with, the coaching staff, the team, talent level. Iowa, or even Cincinnati and Oklahoma, which I know we'll talk about here in a second, any 3 of those teams drop 1, they can kiss the CFP goodbye for 2021.
It's a real in-depth way of saying no. What about Oklahoma? They make the quarterback change in the Red River Shootout. I'm not supposed to say that, but I did. And I'm at a state of kind of disbelief that they're willing to change quarterbacks from Spencer Rattler with all the hype that goes around him. Is it arrogance or is it bravery to bench your guy that's supposed to be a Heisman contender, and you live and die by that guy, don't you? I mean, I know Caleb Williams comes in and plays well, and Oklahoma's still in a spot to, win the Big 12 and go to the CFP. But what do you make of Lincoln Riley's decision to step away from Spencer Rattler yet again?
I'm going to call it a SYA decision, and stands for Savior and Blank.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lincoln Riley, though he's found success in the Big 12 and reaching the CFP, you got to wonder at what point does Oklahoma say, when are we going to be able to get to that next level? And not even just win a national championship, but have the opportunity to compete in the game for a national championship. And, obviously that was not going to happen with Spencer Rattler. A lesson, I learned just from watching college football just a few years ago with Tate Martell, just because his name's all over the headlines and, Vegas odds for a certain player are pretty high when looking at certain awards or NFL draft stock and things like that. It really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day if you can't perform with what's right in front of you. And I think that's what happened with Spencer Rattler. I think at this point with him, I don't think he's going to be able to return to Oklahoma after this season. They were chanting things in the stands that, were not too kind to Spencer Rattler. And it's clear that Lincoln Riley's made his decision, and moving forward, I think that they're going to stick with him. And Spencer Rattler's just going to have to ride this season out. Unfortunately, lost his red shirt, missed it by 2 games. But, no, I think Spencer Rattler's time at Oklahoma is done.
I wonder about a potential destination. I see a lot of colorful uniforms or a wide variety of uniforms in his future. With another big circle logo, maybe some green and yellow. They could use a quarterback to overcome their problems. Kentucky and Georgia, you touched on it a little while ago. This is really Alabama's best shot to avoid Georgia. Not that you want to avoid opponents. You want to play the best of the best and earn everything that you get. But with Kentucky and Georgia taking place next week in Athens, what do you make of Kentucky's chances after a big win down in the Bayou and an opportunity to win the East for the first time?
I think they need to go ahead and rewatch that Arkansas-Georgia game 5 times over, and then another 5 times. I think there's a lot of lessons they can learn from what Sam Pittman did down in Athens when trying to take down the Bulldogs. This is, I think, an exact situation. This mirrors what Arkansas was doing when they were trying to take down Georgia. You know, this is a team that entering the season, no one really had high hopes for, any high expectations. And here they are in Athens, getting ready to take on Georgia, looking right outside of the top 10. And everyone's kind of hoping, is this an SEC Cinderella story for 2021? Obviously, no one thinks Kentucky's going to have long-lasting success in the SEC. This might be just one of those, one-off years where they have a really strong beginning to the season, or just maybe a strong season overall. But I don't think, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think the Wildcats make it into Athens and leave, remaining undefeated. I do think Georgia gets the better of them, unless Kentucky can go in there, learn from what Arkansas did wrong, and maybe show Georgia some things that they're not necessarily expecting heading into the game. But no, it's going to take a completely different game plan to prepare for such a strong defense like that.
Especially when you think about the way that Arkansas was manhandled, and their bread and butter is manhandling other teams. Georgia was prepared for that. They've got one. They have the strongest front seven in college football. So Kentucky's going to have to really and truly, they're going to have to rely on Will Levis. And I know they got a strong running game, but that's probably the situation there for them. LSU. The writing is on the wall for Coach O, but listen to the remainder of the Tigers' schedule. They get Florida this week at home, at Ole Miss, at Alabama, Arkansas at home. They get the break, the little bit of a relief with Louisiana Monroe. That's the lesser of the two Sun Belt Louisiana teams, and then they closed with Texas A&M. 4 of their final 5 games. I can't do math. 5 of their final 6 games, all ranked opponents, all will be ranked when they play too. But the writing's on the wall. But really and truly, I mean, just the shock factor of LSU being in this space. I mean, we kind of went into the season maybe thinking this was going to be Ed O's last season, but not on this kind of scale.
No. If anything, I thought this would be his last season, at the conclusion of the 2021 season. Now I'm talking to Patrick Kahn, who covers LSU for USA Today, and he's telling me odds are Coach O will not be coaching the Tigers by the time they come and face Alabama this season. So what is that, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away at this point? And he said if he's still there when the Crimson Tide takes on LSU, Alabama might just be the final nail in the coffin for Coach O at LSU, depending on how bad of a loss they get when coming to Tuscaloosa. There's going to be plenty of openings, I guess, for Coach O to throw his name in there. And, hey, who knows what's going to happen with Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien at the end of this season. Maybe the Nick Saban coaching rehab facility will be open for business, and Coach O may want to send in his application.
That's interesting. What would you do? Would you have him coach against Alabama, or would you see how that one goes? I mean, you know how it's going to end, but see how close you can keep it with Ed O on the sidelines.
At this point, if I'm an LSU administrator or the athletic director for LSU, depending on how badly they lose against Ole Miss and Florida, he may just not be there at all. However, if they do want to just say, you know what, Coach O, we're going to let our fans see why we're giving you the boot, and just go out there and take a big old loss to Alabama and Nick Saban one last time. And, maybe the fans then will be unanimously agreed that it's the right decision to say goodbye to them.
Yeah, and that at least gives you the opportunity. Because if you've got an interim coach coming into Tuscaloosa to coach the Tigers, that poor soul ain't got a snowball's chance of coming back. At least if you can start with Arkansas and ULM and TAMU, you might be able to get the most out of your players for the final 3 games, make a bowl, and then have a shot. But good, LSU is looking 4-8 right in the face, and that is not something we're used to. Talking with AJ Spurr at Spurr FM on the Twitter account. Check out his work, the site editor of Roll Tide Wire, covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for USA Today. Let's jump in with some Bama pros. Get an update on your guy Tua. He's expected to be back next week versus Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars for the home game there in London for the Jags. Is that the case? Will he be back? How is this team going to be, able to respond after some marginally okay play from Jacoby Brissett in his stead?
Well, Tua back yesterday, just started throwing, back at practice. Not a definite green light for him to go ahead and play in London this Sunday, but all signs are pointing to him, heading out there being the starter. Just no official word on it yet. Just good recovery. As for how he would fit back into the Dolphins, Jacoby Brissett, for who he is and what he was given and the games he had to play, he made the most of it. He did what he could. No one expected Jacoby Brissett to head out there and be the, Tom Brady to Drew Bledsoe. It's Jacoby Brissett. Tua's down. A lot of the wide receivers are hurt, either out for the season or out on IR for a minimum of 3 weeks. They took a pummeling to the Bucs this past week. They put up a fight against the Raiders 2 weeks ago. And, the Colts game, well, that's one I and all other Dolphins fans would like to forget. But bringing Tua Tagovailoa back into the starting lineup here would be great. I feel like they're really starting to use Jalen Waddle more effectively. Will Fuller's out for the season, so there's another reason as to why Jalen Waddle will likely get more downfield looks. Devontae Parker is still a little hurt, so they're going to be looking to Albert Wilson. They traded Jakeem Grant. This offense, heading into the season, a lot of people thought we're going to have a lot of weapons for Tua. Turns out they either got traded, not as good, and got cut, or they're hurt. So a depleted arsenal for Tua Tagovailoa in his return across the pond against the Jaguars.
I hate to do it. I really do, but we're going to have to skip over Trayvon Diggs and his incredible season to talk about Najee Harris, because Najee's going to be the Bama Pro of the Week on Tide109.com. People can call me biased if they want to, but the Steelers do not beat the Broncos without his performance finally getting a 100-yard game as a rookie. I don't know if you watched the game, but just from the fact that Najee is becoming the lifeblood of the Steelers offense, and knowing what he did at Alabama, the kind of leadership that he brings, there is some value in drafting a running back or not first overall. Don't ever do that, but in the first round.
Well, yeah, and when you draft Najee, you're not just drafting a running back. You're drafting an expert pass catcher out of the backfield, or even someone that could line up. You're drafting someone that's going to, be a great face, a great young face for your franchise. You're drafting a future leader, if not one already right now, and someone that's going to carry a good attitude and a wanting to win, into this team. So no, being a Dolphins fan, and we've had this discussion already, Jacob, congratulations on getting him number 24, and you're welcome for having the Dolphins pass on him.
Thank you so
18.
much. Hey, Myles Gaskin ain't playing bad.
No, he's not. He's not. But it's no Najee. No. It's no Najee. And with Big Ben, on his way out, Juju out for the season. My condolences, by the way. The Steelers really just need a friendly face and a good push in the behind here to be competitive and at least stay a quality NFL team in a division that is, super, super strong, probably the strongest in the NFL.
If the Steelers can get on track, it'll be right there with the NFC West. AJ, I always appreciate it, man. At Spur FM on the Twitter account, Roll Tide Wire site expert or site editor. That's the terminology there. Covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for USA Today. AJ, man, have a great rest of your week.
You too, boss. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. AJ Spurr helping us out. We'll take a break, come back, try to squeeze in a couple of phone calls, and get out of here on a Tuesday. I'm Jacob Harrison. This is Off the Edge, Tide 100.9.
Hey, Bama fans, before you head to the stadium to watch the Tide roll, stop by JD's Market and Spirits for all your tailgating needs for Bama football games. Located only 3 blocks from the stadium, JD's offers over 500 liquor items, 400 wine items, and a huge selection of craft, domestic, and imported beers. JD's also has hot dogs, snacks, ice, and game day supplies. Everything you need for tailgating. JD's Market and Spirits, 400 yards from Bryant-Denny Stadium on the west side. Call 722-2113.
So, what are you sipping? Whether it's our freshly ground coffee to wake you up or an icy Polar Pop cup or Froster to keep you going, our new Sip and Save drink subscription at Circle K will keep you refreshed every day. Join Circle K's Sip and Save and grab any size drink every day for just $5.99 a month. Yeah! Start sipping and saving today. Just sign up with your mobile number when you check out at Circle K. Limited time offer at participating locations.
Can I get a weight reading on the cat in exam 3?
Zuri needs a new vet tech after their current one literally moved to a farm. But finding an ideal replacement takes some training.
This is like herding cats.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com.
You're listening to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Hey, Bama fans, before you head to the stadium to watch the Tide roll, stop by JD's Market and Spirits for all your tailgating needs for Bama football games. Located only 3 blocks from the stadium, JD's offers over 500 liquor items, 400 wine items, and a huge selection of craft, domestic, and imported beers. JD's also has hot dogs, snacks, ice, and game day supplies. Everything you need for tailgating. JD's Market and Spirits, 400 yards from Bryant-Denny Stadium on the west side. Call 722-2113.
So, what are you sipping? Whether it's our freshly ground coffee to wake you up or an icy Polar Pop cup or Froster to keep you going, our new Sip and Save drink subscription at Circle K will keep you refreshed every day. Join Circle K's Sip and Save and grab any size drink every day for just $5.99 a month. Yeah! Start sipping and saving today. Just sign up with your mobile number when you check out at Circle K. Limited time offer at participating locations.
Can I get a weight reading on the cat in exam 3?
Zuri needs a new vet tech after their current one literally moved to a farm. But finding an ideal replacement takes some training.
This is like herding cats.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Just a chance of a few isolated showers today. Otherwise, a mixture of clouds and sunshine. The high 86. For tonight, mostly fair with a low at 67. Very warm tomorrow and Thursday. Partly to mostly sunny both days. Highs between 85 and 88. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 80 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Off the Edge on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for live streams and instant analysis. Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison continues.
4 minutes to go here on Off the Edge. Tide 100.9. Your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Try to squeeze in these phone calls. Start with Jim. Jim, what's going on?
I'll be real quick. One thing that at the end of the half, Alabama had a couple timeouts left. A&M ran the ball on first down and made it to their own 10-yard line, and Bama didn't use any of their timeouts. They could have forced them to punt with 20 seconds or so left, got in field goal range, or punt return, block punt, anything. So that I don't know why they didn't call timeouts. I mean, the other thing, no disrespect to your previous guest, but if he don't think Florida is a bump in the road for Georgia, he doesn't know that series. I mean, Florida's got a pretty good defense themselves.
They do.
It's in Jacksonville, and here's the thing about Georgia: they don't have like a high power offense. So anyway, Florida has this defense that can stop Georgia. It could be a defensive battle. So this turnovers could decide that game.
No, I agree with that. I think the cocktail party will be a major fixture for Georgia. I think it'll be more so than the Kentucky game. Not to disrespect Kentucky, I'm going to be rooting for them in all honesty, but I mean, they've got enough, and if maybe if Richardson plays a vital role in that game, maybe they'll be able to take something out of Georgia with some explosiveness and take advantage of the dynamic nature of his play, and that can cause some problems for Georgia's defense. But the efficiency with which Georgia runs its offense, I know it's not explosive, but it's efficient, and that's what makes them so dangerous. So I think even still, if Florida doesn't have explosiveness, then their efficiency wanes, and that's kind of the difference in that one looking down the road. As for the timeouts, I mean, I don't think it was some major difference. It is slightly annoying, but that's been the case with Saban for years. Like
but being down 14 points, being down 14 points, I think should maybe make you do it. I mean, because you need all the possessions you can have. I mean,
And what's really bad is we never got a explanation because he misunderstood the question at halftime from the TV reporter. But Jim, I got to run to one more call, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Absolutely, Jim, helping us out there. And now we'll go to Bryce. Close it out. Bryce, what's going on? Bryce. Well, we didn't have Bryce. It's okay. It's all right. I mean, with the timeout thing, and to finish the thought, since Jim asked about it and I didn't really get a real chance to explain it, it's a shame that we didn't get a full, understanding of what happened there. Nobody was going to bother to go back and ask about it because it would have just fired him up, and that would be what it is, because he felt like he had to explain himself twice. He doesn't like to do that. But I don't think it's like the difference in the ballgame. I think if you want to point to differences in the ballgame, I think the biggest thing is the kickoff return for a touchdown, because that waned all of the momentum away from Alabama that they had built up with the punt block. So is what it is. Not the way that you want to feel about it, but Alabama they've got their destiny in front of them. Texas A&M, they're the best their season can be is a Sugar Bowl appearance, right? And they'd have to really, really fight for that. So good luck. But we'll see how things go. It'll be an interesting season. I'm Jacob Harrison. Big thanks to Jake Kaczynski, Joe Gaither, Palmer McCall helping us out this morning. The Jay Barker Show is up next, and we'll catch you tomorrow at 11 a.m. right here on your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports, Tide 100.9.